Welcome back with Asian Impact with Terry. It's a pleasure to be with you here again. In our last session, we were talking about that I was the executive director of Hong Kong Farris Hospital Foundation. And one day I was getting into the elevator going up to the upper floors of the hospital. And there stood a nun in front of me. And as I pushed the button, I could tell that she had been crying. And I looked over to her and I said, hey, is everything okay? And she said, it's kind of a hard time right now because the program that we've been running for the last 3 years, we've run out of funding. And I said, oh, interesting. I'm the fundraiser here at the hospital. Maybe when you're done going around and seeing everybody, you could stop by and I could learn more. So that afternoon, she stopped by. She shared with me that they had developed a program. They had focus in the community, really cutting edge, making a difference in Hong Kong, but they didn't have time to do fundraising. And I said, why don't you take me over to the foundation that gave you the grant and maybe we can understand more. So a few weeks later, she took me over. We met with the head of the chairperson of the foundation. And the chairperson of the foundation said, look, every year we support 15 different organizations that have kind of different programs or programs that might not be easy to raise money for because it hasn't been tried before. So we've set aside a portion of our donations to help these organizations look at issues that no one else is looking at. We give money for 3 years, and that's it. And I said to them, as I talked through the program, I said, what if you took 10% or added 10% to this grant? And you had someone like me come in for the next 3 years and once a month come and do a fundraising workshop. Teach them how to do annual giving, how to do major gift giving, how to create a sustainable giving program. The chairperson looked at me and said, look, if you write a proposal, we'll take a look at it. So I wrote a proposal. And a week later, she came back and she goes, can you do 15 organizations? And I go, I work full time for for the hospital. And she said, if you ever are able to do consulting, we'd be very open to it. So over the next month, I really started thinking about this, and I made the decision that I would launch Farris Associates, the first really philanthropy fundraising consulting in Hong Kong. And this was back in 1999. It was just rolling over to the year 2000. I went back to this foundation, and they gave me a 3-year contract and said, please work with all of these organizations and teach them that, by year 1, they have an annual giving program. Year 2, they've got reoccurring donations from those people who've given. And year 3, that these programs are sustainable. So I did. I then went out and had conversations with other of my donors who were at the hospital before. And they said, hey, look, I want to set up Creative Initiatives Foundation, a foundation that's helping nonprofits become more efficient, more business-like, that they actually are accountable for how the money is given, helping boards to be professional, helping them to think that they have to take responsibility. They said, can you do this and manage this for 3 years? So we became the manager of Creative Initiatives Foundation. We worked with Ernst & Young, PwC, and different larger, consulting firms, because there's over 3,000 nonprofits in Hong Kong. And their whole stipulation is that 80% of the board had to show up for a weekend after all the research and everything had been done. So first, the consultant would come in. They would do an interview. We had a set of interview questions for all 20 individuals, all the senior management. those people who were stakeholders and for the board, compile that information, write down kind of a SWOT analysis, and over the weekend would do, what is your current position? Who are you today? And then where do you want to be? What is your vision? Put out the goals, everything that you want. Let's put it down. And then on the Sunday, what are the gaps and how are we going to fill those gaps? And it was amazing to see how we gathered so much information. And I think there was over 150 organizations that went through this. But Po Chung really believed in innovation. He believed that we had to transform the charities. We had to transform the board members to help make changes throughout all the nonprofit sector in Hong Kong. So we did that. We ended up working with universities. We helped higher education. We helped hospitals. We developed fundraising programs. We ran capital campaigns for St. John's Cathedral in Hong Kong, which was very fun. But one of the things that I had read somewhere, I found a book by Jay Hughes, who was an attorney who had been doing wealth management advisory in the US for 30 years. And he had written a book about family values, how philanthropy was the glue that binds the family together, how wealth succession and wealth preservation came down to values, mission, vision. It came down not to just financial means, but getting a family to work together and working on building a family constitution, building a family governance, looking at rules of engagement. And it fascinated me how philanthropy was the first few things on the list for a family constitution. So I reached out to Jay Hughes. I asked him, could you be my mentor? And so he started to mentor me. He was based in the US. He had retired, but he was willing to come along and to help us. And he had written 7 books. And it was something that I started to really focus on. I started going to the banking conferences and talking about how philanthropy was just not giving away money, but it was a glue that binds the family together. We started doing articles. We started, partnering with Euro Money in Hong Kong. And what we did is that we started to say, maybe private banks should start having these conversations. And so we launched the first kind of philanthropy advisory for banks. Coots, LGT, Meese Pearson, Bank of Bermuda. We had conversations with. Citibank and American banks have been doing this. I had learned this through my legacy planning in San Francisco, New York, back in the early 90s. And I thought that if I could take this and help families as they set up their foundations to engage all of their family members together to make a greater impact, it would help them on their wealth succession. And we did workshops, and I brought together one of the banks to underwrite for Jay to come out for a full day. And we had it at the American Club. In 2003, we had 25 of the biggest families coming to pitch and to share how family governance was one of the greatest tools that a family could use, and philanthropy could be the cornerstone, the values of the family. SARS came along, everything got shut down. But Jay said he would come out, and we organized and we put together this event for these families. And I believe today it's still one of the first family governance events, gatherings that took place in Hong Kong. And I still, 25 years later, 22 years later, I still run into these families that we started working with them on their philanthropy. And some of them you'll see at the World Economic Forum. You'll see them around the world pushing the work that they've done. And it was a tool that could help families come together to work together. So the journey came from fundraising, working with nonprofits, working with family foundations, then working in family governance. And I would have to say that the most enjoyment I had was seeing how families who sit on boards saw that this was a tool that could be used in working and bringing all their family together in a non-threatening way. It taught them about board governance. It taught them how to manage their foundations and ask the right questions to help grow the sector, the nonprofit sector. And we saw out of Hong Kong that this bloomed. And today you'll find many nonprofits, you'll find social innovation hubs, you'll find impact investing. A lot of it has come through the work of Po Chung, of other people in the communities to make a difference for society. So thank you for joining me with Asian Impact with Terry. I look forward to our next conversation.